Welcome to the NQ80 Daily. Today we're talking about the continuing fallout from Danny Daniels Ashworth's firing at Manchester United. Oh, it's by mutual consent, officially.
Yes.
With Wayne again, how's it going?
Great. I'm not at all confused by the events.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it briefly with Dan Harris at the weekend, just reacting to the Adam Crafton piece in The Athletic. I think quite a bit has come out since then, gives us a bit more perspective on what the story is and why. So let's just recap events and then we can go into what we think the implications are. So he got fired shortly after the defeat to Nottingham Forest, was led out through a different way to meet with Omar Barada, who delivered the news. And we don't know whether he did it in dramatic Trump style, "You're fired," or whether it was more somber than that. But that's what happened. It appears from the Athletics reporting in particular, but others now, that there was some tension and friction between the expectations of what Jim Ratcliffe had for this role and what Ashworth actually was. So Ashworth's an operations guy. He's not the guy that goes, "Yes, you should sign these 5 players and here's all the data that goes along with it." Given that the interview that that Ratcliffe did with Andy Mitten and UWS last week, kind of gives us a little bit of context and perspective when he's complaining about the data department at United, and the reporting comes out that he's particularly frustrated with Ashworth's lack of, declarative certainty around who the next manager should be. I think that's my reading of it. Anyway, what was your take on the actual firing, and then we can get into what it might mean and what comes next.
Surprising. Obviously, I mean, yeah, all right. I mean, there have been little murmurs that if you join the dots together, you might be able to ascertain that there's been some tension there, but nothing serious enough that you would think that it would reach this kind of escalation this quickly. So there's that, which concerns me. I have said before here that my concern with the management and the identification of the man who came in to replace Eric Ten Hag was that I wasn't sure from the way that the pathway looked that it was a decision taken with any great conviction. And when you look at the speculation around the events surrounding this particular exit, it does tend to sort of give weight to that, because you look at it and you think you want everyone to be on the same page. That's never going to happen 100%. I understand that. But we're talking about a series of decisions now. So I know you want to talk about the Ashworth decision in particular, but I'm just talking about the general strength of faith that I have in the decisions. And it
all fits together, doesn't it?
Yeah. So going back to the summer when we brought in all those the supplementary staff for Ten Hag, and I was saying before, this isn't hindsight. This isn't me saying it being wise after the event. I was saying at the time I'm a bit cautious about this because they're not the men that he's brought in, and these are men being brought in. And what happens if Ten Hag gets sacked? Obviously, that happened, and they all went. Then you bring in a manager whose playing style is so rigid, and that's not a bad thing. That's what it is.
His philosophy is rigid. The playing style is flexible, but
Sorry, that's what I meant. So it's like the system and everything like that is such a diversion away from what we used to doing. And now you're saying all legs have got to go in that basket, because obviously if your transfer strategy matches this philosophy and this system, then it means that you are welded into this system for the foreseeable future, meaning that it will impact what happens with the subsequent managers and so on. So my concern is that, do I have any great conviction that these decisions being the hiring of Amorim and the firing of Dan Ashworth, do I feel like they've been made with a great long-term plan in mind? I'm not sure I have any great confidence in that, and I think
It doesn't feel like it to
concern.
me. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say. I mean, both from my historical personal background in business and watching executives get hired and fired, and so on, it doesn't feel to me that there is real clarity of thought and strategic thinking at the club at the moment. And it feels to me that like there's political tensions there that are causing this. Now, I'm speculating and I'm reading between the lines, so I'm not saying I have any particular insight into exactly what has happened there. But if I looked at any company from the outside and started to see these kinds of decisions made, I would suggest that there isn't real clarity around strategy and where the club is going. And I think that's unfortunate. It mirrors what happened at Nice, where they made a lot of changes in the first 3 years of ownership and have only really just settled down on a clarity. Now, we thought and talked about this, that period of experimentation at Nice and the learnings and the mistakes they made, and at Lausanne when they actually got relegated with Ratcliffe's brother in charge, that they take those learnings and go, okay, we're not going to repeat those mistakes and we'll have real clarity. And it felt like that initially, didn't it? Like, we need structure. Ratcliffe said it over and over again. The structure comes first. The game model and playing style comes first. And then we'll get that in place to support the manager. And it talked a really good game. I think Ratcliffe in particular talked a really good game. Brought in a technical director, brought a director of football. Obviously, it took a very long time for Ashworth to actually get into the club because Newcastle were playing chicken with the compensation. Brought in a new CEO, brought in a new chief business officer, chief revenue officer, chief business officer. Brought in a new director of recruitment in Christian Vivel. And so, like, putting the structure in place looked really sensible, didn't it? It looked like, hey, we have a real clear vision about what we want. And then came the decision not to fire Ten Hag in the summer, which in retrospect, given what they've done now in recruiting Amorim, was a £20 million mistake, right? So now, of course, once they decided not to fire him, like they surveyed the landscape of potential managers and interviewed all these people very publicly. Once they decided not to fire him, they kind of had to back him. But they couldn't just say, hey, we're going to continue with what had failed before. That would be kind of madness, really. So what they've, like, you can see the cogs turning in their thinking, can't you? Like, they've gone, okay, well, we need some changes. We're going to back the manager because we don't feel there's an obvious replacement, or there wasn't clarity of thinking with the leadership around keeping him or firing him. So we better give him a new contract so he's not a lame duck. We better bring him some support in areas because we think he's too stretched or needs help or whatever it was. So that's the thinking behind it. But it was a terrible, catastrophic mistake in retrospect with pure hindsight, right? To do that. And they've compounded it all. And as a result, they paid £3 million in compensation for Ashworth. They paid £10.4 million in compensation to Eric Ten Hag and his crew, his team of coaches. And they paid, who all came in on 2-year contracts, right? So fairly expensive. And they paid 11 million euros, so 10 million as the break clause and 1 million extra to get Ruben Amorim a couple of months early for Amorim and his team, right? So that is nearly £25 million that is cost for this whole dance. Now, some of that would have happened anyway. The Amorim fee was there in the summer. They would have had to pay Ten Hag a 1-year contract. So, it's cost, I don't know, 7 or 8 million in total. This kind of lack of clarity in thinking. And I think they're all wrapped up together, right? So I think what Ashworth has brought in on, it seems, personal relationships, right? There's a lot of fair questions to be asked around the amount of due diligence they did on him, because there appears to be a mismatch in expectations between what Ratcliffe wanted, if we are to believe the reporting, and what Ashworth would bring. Everyone in the game says Ashworth's time at West Brom, at England, at Brighton, at Newcastle is that he's an operations guy. He's like a COO of the football department. Mm. But it turns out that so is Omar Barada, and he's been acting as the COO to Jim Ratcliffe as the CEO, right? This is what I'm saying about lack of clarity around strategic thinking, leadership here. Like it feels like, to use a football term, everyone's in everyone's zone here. And it might point to what will happen next, right? Because Barada really is a strong operations guy, which his history doesn't really say he is, but if he is, and Ratcliffe can't help himself but to be fairly involved, then we might have a future in which there isn't a football director at all, and they split the responsibilities between Ratcliffe and his support crew, Ineos, Omar Barada and Jason Wilcox. I don't know. I talked a long time there, but that's how I see the kind of landscape unfolding at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's all fair as well. I think you are right. It does appear, especially from giving his comments and everything like that, that Ratcliffe cannot help himself from being involved, and no, should he really? There's no rule in there to say that he should or shouldn't. He didn't sign up and put all this money in to be a silent partner. He'll have ideas about where he wants it to go, as well as bringing in what everyone thought was the best in class for all these positions. And like you said, I do think that maybe there's an element of accountability. So by all accounts, Ashworth was someone who, although there's already conflicting reports on this, he was the one who was ultimately bit the bullet for the backing of Ten Hag, right? So, look, we can now definitely say that we can only find out with the benefit of hindsight whether this is strong leadership on this decision, that they've said, right, Ashcroft was the one. Ashworth, bloody hell.
Ashworth, thinking 90s pop now, are we?
Yeah, Richard Ashcroft coming in. Ashworth, I'll tell you what it is. Ashcroft is a regen on my Football Manager, so that's why the name's in my head. Ashworth is, if you basically appropriating him with the responsibility of this, then you can look back in 6-7 months. If it turns out that everything starts going more smoothly, then you can look at that and say, all right, we made the right decisions then, and it was down to the ill steering that we had from the first place. Now, I wouldn't have thought that this should be the case, because there were that many different people in positions that it shouldn't have been Ashworth's opinion that mattered most.
No, unless he felt like a veto, right?
Yeah.
So if everyone was like, yeah, this guy's got to go, but Ashworth was like, well, I'm the director of football. It's really my job, my responsibility. I'm hiring and firing, which in many clubs it is. Doesn't mean
it could be,
yeah. But he appears to have been sidelined, right? So if he basically had a veto on Ten Hag's future, he then got sidelined on bringing Amorim. He was not part of the negotiation team. That was Omar Barada that went over there and did the one-on-one with the sporting ownership, whereas Ashworth was sent back to support Ruud van Nistelrooy in some undetermined fashion, right? So, this is a problem, right? You need clarity. This is what I'm saying about clarity of strategic thought, right? Like clear understanding of roles, responsibilities, and accountability. Now, we've suffered at this club for 2 decades or at least since 2013 and David Gill left and Fergie, with a lack of accountability at this club, because it's always somebody else's fault, right? And I think we thought with all these new executives coming in, there'd be clear accountability. Omar Barada, you are the CEO of Manchester United now. You're not the football operations person. That's Dan Ashworth. You're not the technical person that is looking at squad composition and pathways. That's Jason Wilcox. You're not pathway development person. That's Darren Fletcher. You're not recruitment specialist. That's Christian Vivell, right? So, but it appears to be that the between Wilcox, Ratcliffe, and Barada, Ashworth got squeezed out of these conversations, and it looks like he is actually fairly weak in this, like in that you shouldn't be squeezed out, and that he may not even be necessary if they think they can fulfill his role without him. Now, we could be totally wrong here, right? And this could be Ratcliffe going, I expected a Svengali who was going to give me all the right answers, and he hasn't magicked up all this stuff. and I'm frustrated, and I want to get to the, instead of taking his own Kool-Aid here and going, hey, I'm going to walk to the right decision, not run to the wrong one. He's run to a decision that may or may not turn out to be right. Now we'll find out in the fullness of time. If they keep making mad decisions about things and getting the player recruitment wrong and the operations wrong, and we keep firing people because we're not moving fast enough, then we'll know that like something's not quite right here. And to the fullness of time will show whether this is the right path or not. And then one final thing, and I'll let you speak. I mean, I'm generally of the opinion when you have some poison in an organization, it's best to get it out as quickly as possible. So if they truly felt like Ashworth wasn't the right fit, and we're not saying he's bad at his job, because everyone in the football industry says he's good at his job, right? And he'll get another job very quickly, maybe even a really big club, but if it's not the right fit, get them out, as long as it's for the right reasons, right? And I'm kind of questioning that now.
Yeah, I think that's we should all be in that position, right? Because first of all, this isn't the only issue that there's a lack of clarity on, or miscommunication, or difficult communication with fans at the moment. There's many. I mean, look, we all remember summers started under Jose Mourinho when it was like, oh, we should have a director of football. And whenever there was like a hint of trouble, Edward would come out, smoke sign would come out from above Old Trafford saying, oh, there's a director of football coming.
It took about 5 years, didn't it?
Yeah, but I remember every sort of 6 months or so, that story would rear its head. And now we've got people in all these different positions operating under different guises. We've also got a complaint, long-lasting, with the ownership structure of no communication. And now we've got communication, and we don't really like what we're hearing a lot of the time in terms of ticket prices and stadium moves and things like that. It's a lot of change, and there's no stable team to sort of at least give us a clear path in that regard. So everything is a matter of transition at the moment. And A, that's not easy for an ownership structure to come into. B, are they partly responsible for that? Yes, they are. C, is some of it avoidable? Yes, it is. D, could the communication be better? I think that they're trying. I don't think they, like you said there, walk to the right decision rather than run to the wrong one. And I don't, obviously they're not making the wrong decisions on purpose. So we've got to sort of give the benefit of the doubt in that. The problem is that we've been here so many times, and I know we can simplify this by looking at a manager and a squad and saying, well, we've seen this, we've given patience so many times, so we want to see something happening more quickly. I think when it's the football club itself, it feels a lot bigger than a team playing on the pitch. And you know what I mean? This isn't just a run of results. This is people's relationships with going to the games. This is people's relationships with what they're actually seeing. I mean, you're saying you're in control of the dynamic of what the football should look like, and you're saying, well, we now need a pronounced shift from that, and we've got a man in charge who's going to steer that and hire the right man for that. And we've already changed what that model is within the 7 or 8 months that we've been steering that. And now we've all got to get behind what this is, with no guarantee really that this is going to be the right way. But you've all got to have faith that it is, which, we will do because we're supporters, and that's what we do really. But you do, obviously, you're going to have the concern about that. And the concern is nothing that clarity can fix. Because like you said, it's only a matter of time telling, really. And so where you've got the doubt, it's like...
I always feel like that's a cop-out saying it's a matter of time, but in a sense, well, we can't see the future.
Yeah.
Having said that, I literally ran a foresight unit for a while, so it was my job to see the future. Very different, though, in football. I mean, so we can't see what it means, and we do have to take it as a matter of faith, and or maybe we don't have to take it as a matter of faith, actually, and that's kind of what we're hearing from the fans at the moment. It's like, well, why should we believe in you? Show us the results.
Yeah.
And some of these changes, stadium, technical directors, managing directors, football directors, all of this kind of stuff, kind of takes a while. and they're telling us there's going to be pain. Ratcliffe said in that interview with Mitten, which was excellent, by the way. If everyone hasn't read it yet, it's well worth it. Yeah, support your fanzines and your podcasts. Patreon.com/NQAT pod if you'd like to do that. Sorry for the plug. But excellent interview. But he says there will be some difficult times ahead. Ruben Amorim said there's a storm coming. It's going to be hard, right? So I guess we should probably take them at face value on that one.
Well, can I just...
But they got it. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, one point on that is that we didn't see, apart from the signings, there's no tangible sign that we have of Ashworth's strength of position or quality of performance. So what we actually have is the assessment from Ratcliffe, which is not good enough. You've been sacked.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm saying. Like, it's murky ground there because there's no clarity.
Very much, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, he said he was a 10 out of 10 football director when he was hired. So did Ashworth's performance suddenly degrade from that 10 out of 10? Or did Ratcliffe have a view of what a football director is that was very different from what Ashworth actually was? Now, I would suggest it's probably the latter rather than the former, right? Ashworth didn't suddenly lose form as a football director and start putting in some stinking performances. I don't think he's quite like that, unless he's the Marcus Rashford of football directors. Was brilliant and then he lost all his form. Oh, sad. So I think it's probably that Ratcliffe thought he was buying something else and had some buyer's remorse. And it looks farcical because you wait 5 months to get the guy. He's in position for 5 months. You sack him again, and presumably they paid his contract off, however long his contract was, and they had to do that. And Ratcliffe will have to see out another period of gardening leave. There's the irony. Will United enforce that, given they're very much against gardening leave previously? And he could end up somewhere else at a big club. I mean, Arsenal are looking for a football director right now because Eddie's gone off to Nottingham Forest and in Olympiacos and the Rayakis group and all of that. So who knows? I think the optics are probably worse than reality. So again, he's one executive of many.
Yeah.
I think the impact on United will be completely minimal, whether they bring in another football director or just decide to split the responsibilities up. I don't think it'll matter that much, even if he's truly is some magician in this role. He's just an executive, but the optics look really bad, and it makes United look like a clown show again. All right. Well, I guess we will wait and see how this plays out. But fun and games at Manchester United, there is not a day without some drama. Thanks a lot for listening or watching, everyone, and your support. Thank you, Wayne. Catch you again soon.